All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Let's Think About It. A lot of thinking and talking to do today. But instead of an intro, imagine this, a 15-year-old, one decision away from either ending up in jail or going to a cop and talking to them. Now, somebody like that, they would need to go talk to the cop, not because they have to, because they want to. That guy is in the room today, Kal Dosanjh, somebody that people look up to, including myself. Very inspired with all the work he's done. Welcome, sir.
Thank you
We
so much.
appreciate your
Very
time.
grateful for that.
More than you think.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
yeah.
Thanks for
you
taking out the time.
gentlemen are an equal inspiration. I should let you know.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
That's very
Mutually
humbling.
inspiring.
Very humbling. This is a podcast where we talk about things that sometimes don't get talked about enough.
Right.
And I think the role you play in the community with the job you do, well, aside law enforcement, which is obvious job, but the youth that you are tailoring for future and especially like the intensity of what you do.
Right.
We want to thank you for that. Have a couple questions, but before that, very briefly, everybody knows you, but for people that are watching that don't know you, who is Kal Dosanjh?
Who is Kal Dosanjh?
In two sentences.
In two sentences. Okay, keep it brief.
I said
Yeah.
Dwayne Johnson. Just saying.
Yeah, you know what? I get a lot of that comparison, but Kal Dosanjh is multi-leveled. Right?
Yes.
So I am, most importantly, husband and a father. I have two beautiful kids, a 16-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. Very busy with their activities
Right.
and with family activities. On top of that, I'm an active duty law enforcement officer. And this year I'm celebrating 25 years
That's
Wow.
awesome.
with my
That's
department.
awesome.
Thank
Congrats.
you. It's a
Wonderful.
big milestone for me. And next, I am a community advocate. I am the chief executive officer and the founder of KidsPlay Youth Foundation. It is a registered charity which keeps youth out of drugs, gangs, and crime
10
by
years
connecting
now?
them. with
2015?
2015, you
2015.
got it.
Almost
Yeah.
a decade. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Almost a
Awesome.
decade, yes.
And you guys are everywhere now, Toronto, Vancouver. I mean, it
Toronto,
started
Vancouver,
here.
Calgary, Colombia, Bangladesh, India.
Wow.
Oh, that's
Yes.
awesome.
That's wonderful.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. So being on the front lines, drugs, gangs, and now youth empowerment, what's the one thing that people misunderstand about the life you're trying to change of the youth?
I think the biggest misunderstanding is the idea that once a gangster, always a gangster. And we have to keep in mind that these youth were kids at one point.
Right.
They come from families.
Absolutely.
Mind you, albeit in some cases dysfunctional families, which result in a lot of trauma
Right.
Correct.
for the kids. And I have many, many examples of that. There's multiple factors that come into play to create that perfect storm, which then becomes that path of destruction that these kids follow into the gang life
Right.
and get involved with the drug scene. And so many of the gangsters that we see, it's the old adage, never get high on your own supply, but a lot of them are using. So they're drug addicts, and on top of that, they're hardcore gangsters. But they started somewhere,
Right.
right?
Right.
And that's what I wanted to break down. Where was the start?
Right.
Why don't we focus on the point of origin
Right.
of that villain arc, so to speak?
So how have you established, where does it start? Is it easier to stop in the beginning when you see the change, when you're going that path?
Oh, 100%.
Right.
And so when we talk about where it started, then let's just go right back to the beginning.
Yes.
So I spent many years in the downtown east side as a beat patrol officer. It was during that time that I used to see a steady stream of kids that were entering the open air drug market. So for those that don't know, Vancouver, specifically the downtown east side, has the largest open drug market in the entire world, let
Yeah.
alone North America.
Yeah.
And what an open drug market is that you can literally purchase any kind of drug
Right.
on the street, but primarily hard illicit drugs.
Right.
And so even the drugs that you find on the streets today, whether it's cocaine, heroin, MDMA, they're all laced with fentanyl.
Correct.
And that's the
Correct.
reason why we're seeing
It's scary,
so.
man.
It's
You don't know
remarkably
exactly.
scary.
Yeah.
You know exactly what it.
And so I used to see a lot of these kids that came from marginalized backgrounds, low-income housing, that would end up in the downtown east side because they were underserved. They had never been provided the amenities and the resources that they needed to succeed in life. And that aside, they never were given an opportunity to be mentored or led or
Correct.
or guided.
Change or have that light
100%.
in there, right?
Yeah, they never had that
Somebody to look up to.
interaction,
Correct.
right, with
Right.
somebody that could actually guide them,
guidance or
give
show
them
them the
guidance, right?
right way.
Exactly, and point them in the right direction, and give them that moral compass, and that northern star of morals and ethics. As opposed to that, what bothered me the most is that society as a whole had the audacity to point a finger at these kids and say, well, you did the crime, you do the time, it's your responsibility. And the ones that are pointing the fingers, well, how many of you guys took out the time to actually guide these kids, to mentor them, to teach them, right? To think about it, right? It's very easy to say that to somebody. You do the crime, you do the time. But let's take a step into their shoes. What did they come from? And one of the stories I'm going to share is Bal Bhutar. So I'm not sure if you guys know, but Bal Bhutar, he's during the Bindi Johal era.
Okay.
So even with the Bindi Johal era, we'll get into that a little later into the podcast. But Bal Bhutar, I want to bring that up right now because I want to demonstrate with a hard example of what a family environment, what a home environment can do to a child. It can be positive or it can be negative. Right. And in this case, with Bal's case, it was quite destructive. And what it was is Bal was a very, very high-profile South Asian gangster. He was responsible for hundreds of crimes and suspected of multiple murders as well with his gang. But where did Bal start?
Right.
And so Manny Amar, who was a good friend of mine, was he produced documentaries. And he decided to produce a documentary on South Asian gangsters. And he wanted to break down the layers. Right. Where did they come from? What are their stories? What were their home life like? How did they end up down this path?
Trying to find a pattern, maybe.
Exactly. He wanted to provide a multi-dimensional perspective on their lives, right? For people so that you understand, right, the complexities behind it all, the layer behind it all.
Absolutely.
So Bal Bhutar had been shot in the back. And as a result of the injury, he became a quadriplegic. So he ended up at Vancouver General Hospital in a place called GF Strong. So GF Strong is a facility that's responsible for rehabilitating major injuries. Right. And so he's a quadriplegic, but he could still talk and he could still move his eyes. So he's lying in bed, and Manny Amar got into GF Strong, and he gets into Bal's room and he sits down with Bal and he goes, "Hey Bal, like, here's who I am. Here's the video I'm trying to make. And I want to ask you a couple of questions. Are you open to that?" And Bal's like, "Go ahead, ask."
Nice.
And he asked Bal, he said, "Do you know the point in your life when you knew you were going to become a gangster, or you knew that this was going to be the path for you? Was there a specific point, a turning point?"
Right.
And if so, do you remember it? And Bal goes, "I remember it quite clearly." He remembered a single point, a single moment that changed and turned everything around. And here's the story he gave. He said when he was young, around 10, 11 years old, that his dad was an alcoholic. Okay. And his dad would beat his mom and beat his brothers all the time after getting drunk. And he said there was a lot of violence at home. And as a result, a lot of trauma and suffering. Right. And Bal always used to try to escape that. Fair. Right? He wanted to escape away from that. And so he would get lost in his paintings, his drawings, his arts and crafts, just like any other kid does.
Right. Absolutely. Just an outlet that you want to have to just...
That you don't want to have to think about
escape.
it.
Right.
Yeah. You want to shut it off.
Right.
But it was always deep down inside of him. He wanted all of it to just go away. Mm-hmm. Right. He wanted all of that trauma and that suffering to end. And so one day there was a coloring competition at his school. And Bal, in his innocence, as a child, he thought to himself, you know what, I'm going to work extra hard and I'm going to win first place in that competition. Right. And when I win first place, I'm going to come running home with my ribbon and I'm going to show my dad, I'm going to say, "Hey Dad, look, I won first place." And my dad's going to be so happy. In Punjabi, they say, "Patmang jo kuch mangna." Like, go ahead, you know what? Ask for whatever you want. I'm so happy with you. And he goes, it is at that point I'm going to say to him, "Dad, stop drinking and I want a happy family." Right? How innocent
Emotions,
is that?
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's hard not to get emotional when
Yeah,
you think
yeah.
about a story like that, that it's an innocent child that's asking
Right.
simply for happiness,
Right.
for the violence to go away. He doesn't want his mom to get beat up. He doesn't want his brothers to
That's
get beat
also
up.
coming
He
from
doesn't want
a
to get hurt.
person who's that high profile in that world, right?
In that
That's also-
world, right? Like people, you asked, the question you
Right,
asked was,
right.
what's the misconception out there?
Correct.
Anyone, they take a look at Bal, they're like, he got exactly what he deserved,
Yeah.
Right.
right? Got shot in the back,
they
he
don't
shot
look at
so many other
the-
people.
That is true.
But did they see that 10-year-old child
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was crying over his paintings, asking for the violence to stop?
Right.
So he had that competition at school, and he worked very hard for it,
Right.
and he won.
Right.
He won first place, and they gave him that certificate, and he comes running home just like he had imagined.
Yeah.
And his dad's lying drunk on the sofa, and he shakes his dad, and he goes, "Hey, Dad, wake up! Look, I won
this."
first place."
Right.
And he's holding it like that. And his dad gets up, and he rips it into 4 pieces, and he throws it in Bal's face, and he goes, "No son of mine is going to be an artist." And Bal goes, "That's when I knew
Yeah.
who I was going to become." And he goes, "The very next day, I stole my first thing." And he
Right.
goes, "I never looked back after that."
Yeah, people look at the bigger picture, but I feel like when you don't look at the smaller picture, that happened a while ago. That's where people kind of go, like, they don't look at that. That's where they go wrong, just to see.
100%. Like any time when we're
Right.
dealing with a problem, let's troubleshoot and take a look at
Why it started.
Why it started.
Right.
It goes
What's
to
the
micro,
origin?
Don't just look at the macro, right?
Right.
Look at the micro,
Dig
break
deeper.
it down into
Dig
the
deeper.
particles,
Yeah.
right? And in the part, and we here, this is not some object.
Yeah.
Right.
We're talking about a human being,
Correct.
right? And I think it's important to humanize the topic here, because the thing is, like, the particles that we're breaking down, these are people's lives.
Right.
Their emotions, right? The experiences.
There's always a
that they have.
cause that's generating the outcome, obviously, right? So
100%,
people-
man. And when you, like, this is the story that I tell people, is that look at it from that perspective. You see a hardcore gangster, so do I. Don't
Right.
get me wrong.
Right.
Right.
He was wrong for what he did.
Yeah.
Right.
But let's take a look at where it started,
Right.
Where the story was. Now, if we can help a child
Right.
at that point, right, then maybe
Things will be different.
things will be
So
different.
how did the KidsPlay Foundation, like, how did you wanted to be a part of such a big community? Obviously, when you started, what was the initial thought?
So there's a story behind that too.
Right.
And so with KidsPlay Foundation, like I said, it was again and again, I would see the same things. I would see these kids coming to downtown East Side, getting involved in the drug scene, getting involved with the gangs, and there was nobody to guide them.
Right.
Excuse me. And I come from a very traditional Sikh family.
Mm-hmm.
My parents are Amritari, meaning baptized. And the one single principle which was instilled in me from a very early age was seva,
Seva.
was giving back unconditionally without expectation.
Right.
And as kids, like, that's all we were doing, and that's what we were taught. And it was ingrained into me.
Right.
Like, it became part of my very fabric of my
Right.
ethos.
Right.
And so, having said that, I would return back to my locker after every shift, and I'd be thinking to myself, man, it's just like, this is wrong.
There's got to be something else I can do about it, right?
100%.
You're
Like,
seeing
it's
that
just
every day, and
Yeah.
this, like, whatever's happening out there is broken,
Right.
Mhm.
right? And we're not fixing it by arresting these kids and pushing them through the criminal justice system
Right.
with additional charges, and they get convicted, end up at the youth detention center, do their time,
Circle.
become even more vicious criminals,
Right.
back on the streets again, back arrested again. That
Because
same
now they know
vicious
the
circle.
process, and
They've seen the worst now, so now it's only going to get worse.
It's only going to get worse,
Right.
right? And it's a downward trajectory after
and
that.
your work with like former gang members and stuff is pretty impressive. How they have like jumped on this platform now to help others as well,
Right.
talking their experience. The gentleman in Bali, I think, that you have recently created a good friendship with. I can't remember his name,
Aaron.
but very like good on you that you had to bring somebody like that in to actually open up more eyes, and you guys have probably saved so many lives, like probably the lives that you don't even know because of the impact you have.
Right.
Yeah, Stan Price is probably the
Yes.
best example of it
Yeah.
all. And for those that don't know Stan's story, Stan was a very, very dangerous criminal.
Notorious.
Notorious.
Right.
This guy was the leader of the Red Alert, which is one of the largest native gangs in all of North America,
Right.
with origins in Winnipeg. And so Stan started the BC chapter here in the
Right.
downtown east side. Stan spent a lot of time in jail. for violent crimes. But Stan is also one of those kids that grew up in a lot of trauma, dysfunction. His parents were addicted. And so they were using coke all the time when he was a kid. And he saw this. And so Stan naturally turned to when that's your source of influence at home and there's nobody else.
It's the biggest impact that you're going to have, right, at that age, obviously. And
100%. Like then your entire world is twisted.
right.
Correct.
Right? And you grow up in this very misplaced.
Your foundation is
Right.
basically that, and they say that you're a sum of the 3 to 5 people you hang out with, right?
Especially at a
And if
young
you're
age,
living in that
yeah.
environment, obviously,
You're a byproduct of it.
yeah.
And so Stan grew up in that kind of environment, and naturally Stan gravitated in that
Right.
direction. And so Stan was always in the downtown east side when I was there, and he was dealing dope from the corners behind the Carnegie Center. But he wouldn't deal it himself. He would always keep his hands clean because he was in a supervisory position, being the leader of the gang, and he'd make his minions do it. So essentially what they were doing is they had gang members, which would then expose the vulnerable population down there of drug addicts to then distribute and sell their drugs for them,
Right.
and keeping some of the drugs as a form of payment. So this is the reality of the world down there. And Stan was overseeing the entire operation. Stan said, I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
And he was, and I believe that. I mean, he was making some unbelievable
Hefty,
money,
right.
hefty money, which that's the lucrative nature of the drug trade.
Right.
But with the lucrative nature of the drug trade come other gang members,
Right.
come other organized crime, come violence.
Yeah.
And so he was involved in incident after incident after incident.
Yeah, like once you get involved into it, like just as a whole, it's just a broader picture. It just becomes a lot more broader, right? So then you can
100%. Like when there's a very thin slice of pie,
right.
everybody's fighting for that
Right,
thin
right,
slice
right.
of pie, right? And downtown east side, everybody's fighting for the biggest share, that the
100%.
biggest portion that they can get of it. And so I remember running into Stan in the downtown east side, and I had enough where I'd be arresting one after the next of his guys.
And you knew who's obviously right.
You know the whole structure,
Right.
the whole hierarchy.
Right.
And so I also knew that he was sitting at the pinnacle of it all. And I finally had enough. I'm like, listen, man, I know you have kids, right? And God forbid that one of your kids gets hooked on the same crack that you're selling to these other kids, then you'll understand the pain of a parent.
Right.
And in his typical fashion, you know what, he waves me off and tells me to F off. And it's like, no problem. You know what, I said my piece.
Right,
I got
right,
off my
right.
chest. But I also said to him, I extended that olive branch. I said, you know what, if at any point in time you decide to leave this lifestyle, I'm here to help you. Right?
That's great. Yeah, instead of just doing the typical, you're actually offering help.
Just being the change is also,
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing, right?
Yeah.
Like if you don't become the change, then
Nothing
you don't
changes.
see change
Nothing
happen.
changes,
Yeah.
right? And if I was typical cop attitude towards them is that, you know what, you're a crook, you're
Yeah.
this, you're that,
It
you're a
would've gone
degenerate.
sideways for sure, yeah.
100%. Like
Yeah.
all it's conflict just leads to conflict.
Right.
Right.
Right. And at some point in time, like at least I can say with good, clear conscience that I did my part in extending him a hand.
Right.
Now it's his responsibility to
Right.
take it. And if he doesn't, that's on him. He can no longer say that nobody was ever willing to help
Right.
me.
Right.
Right.
I think something special about you, man, is you can see through people's layers.
Right.
Because like you've defined like how they get caught up in this and then they do wrong things, but they're not bad people. End of the day, they're still a human soul and,
Right.
you know, it's just the circumstances they were handed, you know. Do you ever see this or anybody pointed it out to you maybe that people that are doing these things are now supporting you also on the same platform? Does that become a conflict for you ever? Or do you see that as a positive thing that people are actually coming out on the platform and helping others?
Well, a couple of things happens
Yeah.
where you have two schools of thought on that.
Right.
You have the school of thought, which is ultra conservative, which
Yeah.
says there is no way that you should be helping these people out.
Right.
Right? Like deep down inside, they're crooks. And I just find that mind-boggling to
Yeah.
believe is that the whole purpose and objective of our punitive system, of our jail system, is rehabilitation.
To make you a
Correct.
better person.
Make you a better person.
Right.
Yeah.
So if that's the logic,
Why don't start at the surface then?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm
If
with
that's-
you. I'm
yeah,
with you.
you're like I'm preaching
Yeah.
to the converted here.
Yeah.
Like if that's the logic that
Right.
we're using,
Yeah.
so if we're
Then
like if these people are correct and we're starting with the logic that it once guilty, always a crook, always a crook, then what's the point of rehabilitating them?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
right? Then let them rot in jail for the rest of their lives. But there's a reason why that structure, legal system is in place, is with the intention, here's the punishment that's associated with that crime. However, the whole purpose of sending you to jail is not only to punish you, but is also to rehabilitate you at the same time.
Right. So
Right?
the system's not broken. The perspective's broken.
Perspective's broken,
You know.
100%.
Yeah.
And my thought process always has been like, every person does have good in them.
Yeah.
Right? Granted, there's some people that are deeply evil.
Yeah.
Right.
There's nothing that you can do about that. And with those kind of circumstances, the justice system will prevail.
Correct.
It's a thin line, and I feel like you know the exact like measure of the line, and then that get used in your like in terms of helping others. You can also see that through people if they will be a good example to.
Well, here's a perfect example of this. Now with Stan, had nobody given him a shot, he either would have been dead right now or in jail. Right? Had he continued on that path.
Right.
Since I offered that help, Stan took me on that help. Right? About 5 years after I'd spoken to him initially. So now it would be about 5-6 years ago.
Wow.
And he's the one that called me.
Nice.
Right? That conversation had obviously planted a seed.
Right.
And so that seed took bloom over the years where that thought kept working itself up.
Right.
That's all
Right?
it takes, right?
That's all it takes.
Sometimes,
And eventually to the point where it culminated in him deciding to take that action and picking up the phone and giving me a call.
Do you think majority of the people feel the same, but they're just not in the position to have someone?
Or maybe nobody
To
offered
open
them
up
that
to?
help.
Well, and so what's happened here now is that Stan, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, he's a manager at the Phoenix Recovery Center.
Wow, I didn't know
I didn't know
that's wow.
That's wonderful.
So this is
awesome.
where I'm going with
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
is he's actually saving people's lives.
Right.
He has saved countless lives
That's
by
amazing.
Wow, that's
taking them
awesome.
off addiction,
Right.
putting them on the right track to becoming productive people in
And
the
those
community.
people can probably relate to him more than
Yes.
you or anybody else because he's seen the journey.
Exactly. There was yes, this is exactly where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
And that was the whole purpose of this, because a good friend of mine told me once, I'll never forget this quote. He said, religion is for those that fear going to hell. And he said, spirituality is for those that have walked through it. Right?
Wow.
And that's exactly what it is. This person has walked that path.
Right.
So his consciousness, right, is operating on a different level. First, think about this for a second. All he needed to do was take himself out of the gang life, extract himself out of it,
Right.
change himself, and become a better person as in just move on with his life and give back to like society in his own way, like start working.
Right.
That's all he needed to do was just focus on himself.
Baby steps, yeah.
And that would have been enough, right? We could have said, you know what, good on him.
Correct.
Right? That he did this for himself and his family.
Right.
But he didn't stop there.
But the seed grew in a plant.
His seed grew into plant.
Right.
Not only did he change himself, he said, you know what,
If I
I'm going
can
to harness this, I'm going to take this, and I'm going to use it to help others.
That's awesome.
And it
Found his
became a
purpose.
platform, and he found his purpose.
Yeah.
And what you just said right there is that it all came full circle a couple of years ago when we went up to Fort St. James.
Right.
So Stan and I flew up to Fort
A
St.
lot of drug
James.
game there as well, right?
Well, not only that, I received a call from the tribes up there because
Right.
they had an alternative youth justice program for high-risk Aboriginal youth.
Fair enough.
They asked us to run a 2-day workshop for the youth there in Fort St. James. So we went there.
Right.
Stan and I did, and we ran a 2-day workshop. And seeing this guy who is probably one of the most violent human beings you've ever met, trust me, he's huge if you
Right.
guys haven't met him, physically speaking.
Right.
Right.
And so you see this guy standing up there, this massive presence who used to be a force to be reckoned with in the downtown east side, now standing in front of kids, teaching them good things, sharing his own story, and changing their perspectives and lives. And every day that we'd finish our workshop, we would go and sit at our hotel, because there's a beautiful lake in Fort St. James.
Right.
And we'd go sit behind our hotel, which was, I think, the only hotel in town.
Out there, yeah. That's
And go sit on the
understandable.
bench and take a look at the lake. And you know what? I said to him one day, I said,
Heck yeah.
yeah, reflect. And I said to him one day, I said, Stan, be honest. Don't you miss the money?
Mm.
Right.
I said that to him. Like, I want to gauge his answer. I want
Right,
to see
right,
what he
right.
says. I'm pretty sure I knew the answer, but I wanted to see what he would say. And he said to me, no, I don't. And I said, okay, well, why is that? He said, because the fact that I can sleep peacefully at night. He goes, I never had that feeling before.
Priceless, yeah.
Even with all
It's
the money.
priceless. He goes, all the money in the world, it's not worth that.
Right.
Right? So that's
When you
amazing.
He's become more of a mentor now to a lot of people.
Right.
Yes.
When you look into the idea of, being happy and being at peace, I think the price, you can't put a price on that in any aspect of
No
the world.
tags, yeah.
No
Yeah.
tags.
Right.
100%.
Oh, that's-
you're right
that's
on
awesome.
that, man.
That's awesome.
And
Absolutely.
mentorship is very like fulfilling as well.
Right.
We recently started helping kids that want to become realtors. And what happens in our business, man, it's just numbers, and people look at us as numbers. Even
Right.
like people that are above us or below us, doesn't matter. We started helping people that are getting licensed or thinking about it to give them true guidance. And that fulfillment, you cannot match that with anything else, because nobody's willing to help them out.
Yeah.
Because right now they're going to see them as, oh, it's going to take them a year to even learn what to do. The way we are looking at them, maybe if we can help them out with 1 hour of our time, that will just point them in the right direction and set the right expectations. Because they look at all this gold and glitter and they're like, okay, let's go sign up for this, right? But they don't see behind the scenes.
Right.
100%, my brother. The one thing that bothers me with the direction that society is going is that every relationship has been labeled with a transaction.
Yeah, it's just
Right.
material. Yeah.
It's
all
material.
fake too.
Yeah.
And that's the
Right.
funny part. If you actually look at the actual relationship, there's no relationship. It's just
Yeah.
material.
It's from a cost-benefit analysis.
That's it.
Right?
Exactly.
What are my dividends in this?
Exactly.
Like how will this serve my purpose?
Absolutely. And I don't think when you said about Seva, like I was able to relate with it, because I think Seva has always been embedded in a way where like you should never expect anything back.
in our culture, and
But
yeah.
now everything happens due to, okay, if I do this, he will do this for me, which is
Yeah, man.
which is a
It
reality.
blows
sad
my mind,
reality.
and that's why it just bothers me most. And like, I don't want to get graphic during this podcast,
Right,
but
right.
like I'm here to call a spade and
Right.
say it like it is,
Right,
the truth of the
course,
matter.
Of course, yeah.
And what bothers me the most is in the Punjabi community, I will have plenty of people that will come up to me and say in Punjabi, "Ke tenu inna kuch karne ki lod hai?" Like, why are you doing all this? What's the purpose behind it? Basically, what they're suggesting is, you know what, go do your work, make more money. And they make it quite clear. They said, there is no point in spending all this time saving these kids' lives, because if you take out one, there's 10 others that are ready to go, right? So how many are you going to save?
As many as you can, right?
As many as you can. And speaking to that story,
Yeah.
it catches up to you at some
Right.
point in time. Like, no matter how mentally resilient you are
Right.
and insulated you are,
Start
it-
make you think, yeah.
it starts making you think, because you're thinking like, I'm working so hard. Granted, we are making a difference, but like, why do I keep hearing this kind of judgment call all the
Right.
time? And so I asked a mentor of mine, and he goes, let me tell you something. And he shared the following story. He said there was a little boy walking on a beach, and the tide had receded quickly, and there was thousands of starfish that were left dying on the beach. He said the boy would pick up one at a time, put it back into the ocean. Pick up one at a time, put it back into the ocean. And in the other direction was walking an elderly gentleman.
Right.
And the elderly gentleman looks at the boy and thinks to himself, how silly.
Mm-hmm.
How many does he think he's going to save? What difference does it make?
Right.
So the man approaches the boy, takes him by the shoulder, and goes, look all around you. There's thousands of starfish.
Right.
And you're picking up one at a time and you're putting back in the ocean. Like, how many do you think you're going to save? What difference does it make? And in response, the boy picks up a starfish, puts it back into the ocean, and said, ask that one
Mm-hmm.
what difference it makes.
Right.
Right. And that's exactly what I needed to hear at that time.
Right.
Because the thing is, you know what? I am on the right track.
Correct.
Right? I am walking this path, and I'm going to continue no matter what anybody says. And that has always been my thinking process, is that, you know what, just because you're going against the grain and you're challenging the status quo and it's not normalized in society doesn't make it wrong.
Just do the good that you
It
can.
also
right?
Just
means
do
you're
the
on the
good
right
that you
path.
Just that means you're right path, right?
Do you
So
think it's mainly in our community where you get the feedback from?
primarily,
Right.
you know what, I hate to say it. And like, you guys look like you grew up with the same values that I did. It was always about hard work,
Right.
Giving
ethics,
back, yeah.
integrity, and giving back and seva. And so when we're raised with these values, our parents would always say to us, work hard, go get your education, become something,
Right.
and give back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these values, there's been a major paradigm shift in values
Narrative
in
is
our
very
community.
different now.
The
for sure.
narrative is very different now.
Right.
The narrative now, your status, your titles, your position in society is predicated on your wealth.
Correct.
Or what you're showing at least as well.
What you're showing. Let's clarify that. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Social media has ruined a lot of lives in terms of that. So yeah.
Well, social media is no less than gangs anymore, man. It's the same, damage it can do to people's brains, and that's where it starts, right?
Well, these kids are innocent.
Yeah.
Right.
They're very, very impressionable.
Exactly.
Right? And what they see, they believe.
Correct.
Right? And a senior cop of mine told me a story, a little saying, actually, not a story, a little saying when I first got on the job. He said, Cal, he said, kid, he said, believe half of what you see and none of what you hear.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, you'll do just fine on this job.
Half nahi karna chahiye with the way things are right now.
In this community.
Years in, that advice worked out well, right?
Believe nothing what you see and nothing what you hear. But that's exactly it, man. It's just...
so thick skin and just follow your purpose is something that you would highly recommend.
Man, I'm telling you, our ancestors had it right.
Right.
So I used to be a full sardar.
When did you change that?
When I first got on the job, I was on the job for about 2 years when because I had to make a decision. That's the way I take a look at it. Like,
which way do I go? Yeah.
Which way do I go? Like when I say which way do I go, like the values are not going to change.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Like my ethics are going to stay the same, but what is Sikhi at the end of the day? Like is Sikhi the sarup?
Right.
Right? Is it the image of the turban, the kirpan, the 5Ks, of being Amritari? For some it is.
Yeah.
Right? No problem. My parents are Amritari.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. And so I respect that. But for me, Sikhi is what you just said right now. It's to learn.
To learn,
right? And be a good human being.
Correct.
Right? It's been said by Guru Nanak, and I can't remember the exact line, but they said, before anything, be a good human being.
Right.
Correct.
Right? And so
there's not very many of them out there. Good profession to be in, especially in today's age.
It is true.
Dad used to say that before his passing. We didn't know. We weren't prepared for it. He had cancer, right? So we didn't know. Thank you. Appreciate that. But everything's temporary. We're all going to go to the same place. Right. Hopefully. But anyways, I was sitting down with him in the hospital. This is just when he was diagnosed. And I'm like, Dad, tusi ki janne mein ki bana hai na? That you're like, we don't know what's going to happen. And at that time, I wanted to become a lawyer for some reason. I was in school. He took a break. He goes, badiya banda ban ke raha hai hi nahi ho je bande duniya ch. I'm like, okay, great. He's like, do whatever, just be a good person. Yeah, there's not very many of them. So that comes back from your story.
And I feel like
it just reminded me quickly,
our parents both have my system gets a little bit,
emotional,
mom also embedded karma is something that is going to bite you in the ass so hard if you do something wrong, which obviously no one sees, but he sees, right?
100%. So there's like, there's so much truth behind it.
100%. Man, just building on what we just spoke about, right? We've sometimes helped people, man, not charging them anything just because they're struggling, right? And our peers are like, oh, you could have charged that person this much. We're like, bro, why? If we had the capacity to help somebody out, I don't care about what others will say that, oh, this guy doesn't charge a commission. Yeah, in certain circumstances, I don't. When I really want to help somebody out, right?
Yeah, if you're in the
That's
position,
my decision.
Yeah, if you're in the position, you should. And I feel like it's not something people should look down upon, because a lot of the new era, what me and him were discussing, we did a lot of podcasts with a lot of people. Anytime you post something negative, it gets so much traction and views. And when you post something positive,
what sells, right?
Right.
Negative
it's
sells.
Like so, like the whole idea of selling the bad thing is so easy now. And people are just forgetting the fact that, like, we are here to do good deeds for limited amount of time, and then exactly, end of the day, right? So,
see, this is that's a sad social statement on our society, when what drives our society is juicy sensationalism, rumors, gossip, drama. They would rather do that than say, I'm going to take my time and I'm going to do something good with it.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And so, like these same people that were saying to me,
same thing.
They would sit at a party and they would drink for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
So you got time for that.
Yeah.
But you don't have time
to
actually help out a kid.
Right.
And so, like, all that is, it's useless rhetoric is what it is.
So just focus on, again, your path, what your purpose is, and that will just, align things with the way it's supposed to be.
And I think our generation now, I call it the woke generation. There's a lot of people that actually feel the same way, because we do talk to a lot of people our age. And I think it's good that we are having this conversation, because a lot of people won't even think of it like the way we are kind of like putting it out there, right? So hopefully it helps people that are watching that are on the fence of like, okay, should I do this? Should I do that? Am I doing the right thing? But if you're being a good person, you're doing the right thing.
Well, 100%. Like,
Yeah.
it's just nothing, not every good deed needs to be on a global scale.
Exactly.
Right.
You don't need to do something grand.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, even just the smallest action that can make a difference in somebody's life.
100%.
That's it. Like, if people are sitting at home thinking to themselves, like, why should I?
Mm-hmm.
What's in it for me?
Right.
Then that's the question you should start off with. Why are you asking yourself that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Why does it have to be for you?
Exactly.
Why does it have to be a transaction?
Exactly.
Right? Why can't it just be done
For the sake of doing
for
it.
sake of doing it?
Right.
Right?
Simple as that.
Simple as that, because at the end of the day, our purpose on this earth is not to make as much money as we can that we can leave for our generations to come. What purpose is that going to serve? Granted, it'll set our generation, it'll have generational wealth that'll help future generations in our family, but that's all we accomplished,
Right.
right within that box. And I even tell everybody, I said, how are animals any different? Animals eat. Their sole purpose in life is for themselves.
Right.
To survive.
And to survive
Yeah,
and their
yeah.
generations,
Mm-hmm.
their kids, right? That is it. Their sole purpose in life is just for that.
Correct.
And if we have our sole purpose is just for ourselves as well, then how are we,
How are
any,
we any
different?
different?
Right.
Right?
Well
Then what's
said.
the point of the
Yeah.
higher consciousness that we have as
Exactly.
human beings, right?
Yeah, a lot of people can't get to that point, Cal, because I guess there's some awareness in this room. That's why we're able to conversate about that. But a lot of people be like, "What do you mean by higher awareness? Like, what is even that? Right? How do you? Where do you buy it from?
I feel like
Where can I get this?
How much does it cost? Right?
I feel like you have to. It's a sad truth, and that's just
Yeah,
again, my
yeah.
opinion, right? Like you have to go through something in order to have that, mindset shift.
Totally, man.
If you don't go through something, I'm not saying that you should go through something to be a better person.
Hopefully, you don't have to go
Yeah,
through
yeah.
something. Right? It
But-
comes
But
without
actually,
it.
you know what? No, struggle's necessary.
Yeah, it is.
Struggle, pain, suffering is necessary
Right.
until you walk that path, like that saying,
Mm-hmm.
where those that have walked through hell, right? That's what
Correct.
spirituality is, because then it forces you to reassess life.
100%, because then everything is on you. Because I think when you take the accountability, okay, if I mess this up, it's on me. I think that changes a lot of things, but a lot of people just don't want the accountability, right?
Right.
The accountability.
You just want to
Okay.
blame.
So next section now, some fun with you,
Okay.
and then we'll wrap it up after this. Any last thoughts after this can come. We're gonna call this Cal Unfiltered. 4 questions, rapid fire. Okay. Who's more dangerous to the future of youth, drug dealers or influencers?
Ooh,
I said to him, like, that's a really good question.
I know.
yeah.
Might not be a rapid fire question, but it's a really good question.
Yeah, we can take our time
Yeah,
with it.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
fine.
Both are in the business of corrupting minds.
Yeah, fair. But pick one.
Really. You know what? I would have to say drug dealers,
Yes.
without a doubt.
Okay, if you weren't a cop or a community leader, what would you be doing right now? I think I know the answer, but I'm gonna ask you anyway.
Oh, I'd be a professional athlete.
I was gonna say.
I was like, I've seen him in the gym. I'm like, I know the answer for sure.
yeah.
Without a doubt.
How many days? What's your training split like?
You know what? I used to do 7 days. It's just, it catches up to you. So now I'm down to about 6 days
Right.
of the day
You
rest.
do cardio and weightlifting, or?
Oh, 100%. I've changed it up. So I was always fascinated by Navy SEAL training.
Right.
Have you guys, if you've seen Navy SEAL training, at the end of the day, the training comes down to mental resiliency, right? Like how you're able to push the
Surprise
human body,
yourself.
right, beyond its
I think
limitations
you
and
told
capacity.
me during those days, push and pull techniques. You used to do that back in the day.
Yes,
yeah,
That was
did.
fairly new at that time, right?
It was very new. Nobody
Yeah.
even was talking about. This is like 6, 7, maybe 8 years ago.
Yeah, push and
Yeah.
pull.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
There's so
Is
many
still
different
the same
mechanisms
split
out there,
right now,
but
or something else.
no, you know what? I do a lot of calisthenics now.
Good.
Lots of calisthenics, chin-ups, push-ups. You know what? Actually, one super exercise, which I want to talk about today, I want to mention at least anyways, and you guys are going to be like, are you being serious? Dandabatka.
They take the
Full body
soul out of you. Yeah, that's,
You do Dandabatka, I
Yeah.
promise you this, you will be an elite athlete.
Really,
Simple
eh?
as that.
you'll be also out of breath for a long time. that's the problem. first.
Everybody out there is now wondering, Dandabatka,
Working on
what's
that,
that?
right?
Yeah, what's
Is
that?
there a English version of it?
They call it judo push-ups or Russian
Oh, okay.
There you go.
push-ups.
Fair
Yeah,
enough,
there
fair
is. Yeah.
Yeah, those will take the soul out of you for sure.
Okay, next one. What's scarier, facing an armed suspect or doing a live podcast with no prep?
Because you were at the pedestal,
Both are on the same level for me now.
you were up there, you say something wrong, boom. Pataka Perana right there. If you say something and then it goes somewhere and it's just gonna.
To be honest with you about that, you know what? I have no shame in saying anything.
That's awesome.
in shame and
You're just
saying anything
yourself.
I believe in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Like anything I say, I believe in what I just said.
You're the
Right.
same person on camera, off camera.
100%.
Because
Which is how it should be.
I was telling him, like, whenever I talk to him, it's literally an unfiltered approach. Like, it's not like,
conversation.
it's not like
Yeah.
you're trying to impersonate someone in front of someone else. You have to be yourself at all times. I think that's the
key.
people forget that, right? That's the problem.
So this fourth question is actually a personal one because I have a 3-year-old as well. I want to know the answer to this since you deal with a lot of kids. What's your go-to trick for getting kids to actually listen to you in the first 10 seconds?
Oh, wow.
Is there a trick?
Has to be something.
Yeah, if you don't listen, I'm calling the cops.
Yeah. And you're standing right there too. Like,
And me standing right there. Actually, a funny story about that. So I walked into a grocery store once. I'm not going to say which one, but I walked into a grocery store
If
once.
you said that, I think I know which one you're talking about.
Okay, well, then that's a pretty good bet. I just walked into a grocery store once, and this BB, older woman in our community, she's talking to the kid.
Right.
And the kid doesn't stop crying, right? I guess the kid wanted something. And the BB saying, and the BB recognized me as I walked in through the door. She goes, dekh la. She goes, je listen nahi kita te ye banda policeman hai te main tenu ede kol fada dena hai.
Yeah.
Right, in English, that you know what, he's a policeman, and if you don't listen, I'm going to call him over and he's going to take you away in his police car. Well, this kid went ballistic.
That's the
He went from level 5 to level 10, screaming his head off. Manager came over.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And the manager comes over, so what's wrong? And the kid starts pointing at me. I'm like, look, man, I just want to
I'm
pick
just
up
here
my
for
milk and
groceries.
Get
bread.
going, right? Oh, that's so awesome. You know what? That actually does work because my
does.
daughter's name is Amaya, and sometimes she really like just panics or not panics, creates a scene, putting her seatbelt on in the car seat. I'm like, the police is gonna come if you don't do it. They're gonna take me. Like, I'm not gonna let them take you, but they're gonna take me. He's like, no, put it on. So it does work. It actually does work. Yeah.
That's the trick now. Now you know.
Anyways, Cal, any final thoughts for people watching? Any message?
Message, it's a short story I want to share.
Yes.
And the story is about legacy. And so I want everybody to understand that your time on earth is about leaving a legacy. So going back, when I was mentioning that I was full Sikh, had the turban and the beard, I was volunteering at the North Delta Community Policing Station, and they had a volunteer appreciation dinner one night.
Right.
And I was experiencing a lot of racism during those days. There was a lot to deal with back in the 80s and the early 90s. And I remember this elderly white gentleman just kept staring at me all night long.
Right.
Made the situation remarkably uncomfortable. And so I'm naturally thinking that he's probably got something very denigrating, something racist to say.
Right.
And so the guys at my table, after the festivities finished and dinner was over, they're like, hey, we're going to go get dessert. Do you want some? I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm sitting there all alone. This elderly gentleman sees his opportunity, takes his cane, and starts slowly hobbling to my table. And this story gets me a little emotional every single time. Starts grabbing his chairs, grabbing tables, slowly starting making his way to my table. And he gets to my table, and I'm thinking, okay, here we go. You know what? He's probably got something to say.
Right.
And I prepared myself. But he grabs my hand and he starts to cry. And I would say he's in his almost late 80s, 90s. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what's going on here? And then he tells me the following story. He said when he was young, he had been sent to Burma during World War II as part of the Canadian military response. So he was part of a radio contingency group where he was responsible for sending signals in case the Japanese came through. And he said when we were there, he said the British military had sent a battalion of Sikhs. And these Sikhs were responsible for protecting us in case the Japanese came through. So our job was to send radio signals.
Right.
And we had been given basic combat training. He said we were scared.
Right.
We thought it was a suicide mission. We're not coming back.
Yeah.
And these Sikhs had been sent to protect us during that time period. He said the Japanese did come.
Oh.
And he said there was a firefight. He said many Japanese were killed, many Sikhs were killed. And he said after everything was said and done, the Japanese retreated. And when the Sikhs had done their job, they also left. But there was no words exchanged between these kids and the Sikhs. Now sitting in front of me, the reason why he was crying, he goes, I don't have much time left.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm here with my family. Those are my grandkids, great-great-grandkids. He said, I didn't get a chance to thank them then.
Wow.
I want to thank you now.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah.
And he said that, and he just walked away.
Nice.
And he left me with that. But what he left me with was this remarkable responsibility of maintaining and preserving that legacy that had been left by our forefathers.
Right.
I didn't know them.
Right.
But that one overarching nexus,
Right.
that connection, was the fact that we shared the same principles.
Right.
It's
Warriors.
also
Right? As
coming
warriors.
from what you had in mind to what you heard was obviously very different as well, right? So
Because you were prepared for
100%.
some
Right.
comments that were maybe rude or mean, and then this happens.
I was ready for confrontation.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then this happens, and he left
Yeah.
me with something that is still with me today.
wow.
Right? And just always reminds me of the importance of bearing that responsibility of building a legacy.
Right.
Because they sacrificed their lives for it.
Correct.
Right.
And now it's been passed on to me, and now it's my job to pass it on.
That's
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 awesome.
excellent, man.
That's
Kal, thank
awesome.
you so much. I think we need to do a round 2 of this, maybe sometime soon.
Definitely do.
But thank you so much for your time today. This was truly our
That's the
pleasure.
least I can do.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, it was a pleasure. It was an honor. Thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate it.